So the thing is that this electrochemistry is applied in form of batteries, all these different batteries we use, and then the electroplating process. Okay, that is done in industry by this process called electrolysis. So इसके आप side heading बना सकते हैं, application of electrochemistry. Application of electrochemistry. All right. So electrochemistry in industry is applied in 3 different ways, as I said. One is electroplating, दूसरा batteries, and third is electrochemical cells. ठीक है, वो भी बैटरी की टाइप ही है. तो इनको मैं फर्स्ट लिस्ट आउट कर देता हूँ, उसके बाद इनको वन बाय वन हम कंप्लीट करेंगे. बाय टुमारो वी कंप्लीट दिस चैप्टर इवन. ठीक है, तो द एप्लीकेशन ऑफ इलेक्ट्रोकेमिस्ट्री इज in the form of electroplating, फिर batteries, and then we have the electrochemical cell. Electrochemical cell is very briefly in your syllabus, but still there is a concept which typically comes in MCQs. Okay, so first today we'll be covering this electroplating concept, right? Come here. Electroplating. So all these cars, like all the car industry, in fact, for example, all the medals and trophies and fancy expensive cutlery, spoons and knives, things that you see in expensive hotels, they're actually made fancy by electroplating process. Okay, इसके through they make it like more better looking, and it sort of protects that substance for long period of time. All these cars, when they're made, at one stage before they fit an engine and everything into it, they pass this body of the car into a large solution of electrolyte, which actually electroplates a lot of less reactive metals on its surface. Oh yes. They don't know this stuff. They know it, but they don't watch such stuff. How it is made, you know that program, how is it made? There, Mr. Omar, you and me are alone in this ocean of science. That's a program on perhaps Science Channel or Discovery Channel. Yes. Yeah. कितने नंबर थे? कितने नंबर थे टर्म हम बताते हैं अभी ये रिकॉर्डिंग नहीं एक सेकंड नहीं तुम्हारे भी लिखूंगा सब. आप लोगों को कहते हैं कितने मार्क्स हैं? 8/25. अभी मैं अपने जमाने के बताता हूँ. 8/25 8/25 नंबर है. और इसके कितने जितने लोग जोक्स क्रैक करते हैं हंसते, मैंने देखा उनके मार्क्स. अली से चेक कर लो जरा. आप लाहौर एंजॉय कर रही थी ना, लोगों ने इधर टेस्ट एंजॉय किया, फेल हुआ बुरे तरीके से. तो all these cars when they're made, before the last 2-3 stages, they actually electroplate the car bodies, because the cars which are made up of metal iron rusts, we know that. आगे हम पढ़ेंगे rusting. तो a single scratch on the surface of car body could actually rust the entire car out, inside out, in few months, especially in the coastal cities. Okay, we don't have that much problem of moisture and everything, but cities and countries where the cities are lying with the sea, ocean के साथ they have large amount of humidity and moisture, तो वहाँ पर rusting is a huge problem for the cars. तो कार की body को protect करने के लिए they perform this electroplating. You guys know this artificial jewelry is quite in these days, right? You don't know. Girls know it. So artificial jewelry is like all the gold and big diamond sets. They're actually not the real gold. They're electroplated. All the large trophies and cups and medals which players get, they're not actual gold. They're gold plated. Under nickel or copper होता है, ऊपर gold की layer. And they know it, by the way.
Yes, yeah.
Scam नहीं है.
Scam है, ये बता दीजिए.
So you know why the athletes and players bite the medal and they take the picture?
Oh, to show asset or asset.
Yes. Back in early 19th century, when they started giving out the medals, they used to give the real gold in the form of medal. So they used to bite it and check whether it's real or not. So the tradition of biting continues. The gold has stopped. So I've seen very good players doing that. Okay. अब आ जाए वापस chemistry पे. Electroplating में there are some things that you need to know, that how is this process done, what are the conditions and the requirements, and then silver plating of iron is in your syllabus, right? वो हम करेंगे. अब आप इसको लिख लें, इसकी definition आ जाए तो it's like process of covering a more reactive metal. It's process of covering a more reactive metal, which is typically iron or copper, etc., with less reactive metal, such as gold, silver, chromium. So typically iron and copper are coated with Ag, it's for gold. Ag aurum is for gold. Ag silver, Cr chromium. So that's what electroplating is. Like by this electroplating process, we cover or coat a less reactive metal with a more expensive, more reactive metal with a less reactive metal. उसके साथ उसको cover कर देते हैं. अब the objective of electroplating and how is it done? वो मैं आपको बताता हूँ. Cr is chromium. But the basic rationale in this electroplating process is that the anode is the less reactive metal and the cathode in this process will be more reactive metal. I mean, these are the requirements of electroplating process. And then the electrolyte that we use in electroplating, it must contain the ion of less reactive metal. This is the rationale or key behind electroplating experiment or the operators that we set. Okay, cathode kya hoga, anode kya hoga, and what would be the electrolyte, right? And as to understand this, as an example, it's silver plating of steel or iron, for example. Silver plating of steel. Why not gold? It's a bit more expensive. So normally the cutlery that you see is silver plated, spoons and knives and stuff. अच्छा, अब इसके लिए, for instance, let's say if I draw this outline diagram, like we have this large beaker in which we are supposed to carry out the electrolysis process. So steel, for example, I have a spoon of steel, okay, steel ka spoon hai, and I want to coat it with silver. So if the diagram has shown you a spoon, and then on the other side is the other electrode, so you might be asked to label this diagram. Now one could clearly see that this is spoon and not this, unless you're in China. So based on this key that I've shown, you guys tell me, okay, which is cathode, which is anode. बताओ शाबाश. सारा टाइम आप नोट्स लेते हैं. Spoon is अभी देखो, वो बेचारी सही बता रही है तो उसको गलत करा रही है. अभी let's just silver, देखो silver is less reactive than steel. अब steel is iron. Now keep this in mind and try and tell me what is spoon and what is. Yeah, so the spoon is, which is less reactive, is anode. And what's the charge on the anode in electrolytic cell? That's electrolytic cell, by the way. So the anode in electrolytic cell will be positive, right? Anode. And that's the उल्टा कर दिया हमने. नहीं, the anode will be less. हाँ ठीक है. So this will be like the spoon. नहीं कोई गड़बड़ है बेटा. है? अभी that is silver. देखो नहीं, तो कैथोड से सिल्वर आयन विल गो टू द कैथोड. गलत हो गया ना, गलत हो रहा है. देखो the thing is our cathode will be silver. ये जो मैनिपुलेट करना है ये तो आयरन है ना, ये तो लोहे का चम्मच है. हाँ कोई बात नहीं, जो लोअर से है एंजॉयमेंट की वजह से. So my spoon is made up of steel and I want to coat it with the silver, right? So we take this silver here as cathode, and the iron spoon is this anode. सारा उल्टा हो रहा है आज. And this is cathode. Anode positive, cathode negative. वो ठीक है. नहीं हम ज्यादा गलतियां करें आज. और जो इलेक्ट्रोलाइट है, it must have the ions of the less reactive metal, which is like silver, for example. जो मैंने इलेक्ट्रोप्लेटिंग करनी है उसका आयन होना चाहिए उसमें. Now once this reaction is done, or like the current is passed, so what would happen in this is that silver will start discharging towards the cathode from anode. So this silver will dissolve in the solution, and from the solution even the silver ions will discharge at the cathode, because they're supposed to go to the negative electrode, right? Your spoon is negatively charged. All the positive silver ion will come and deposit around the spoon, and it will make an even surface or layer around it. इसमें the cathode anode reactions are similar, by the way. इसके नीचे आप लिख लें anode reaction and cathode reaction. So what's happening at anode is loss of electrons. So silver ions will dissolve in the solution, and that's like silver turns to silver ions by the loss of electron, and that's like oxidation. And oxidation is always what is happening at anode. नहीं Fe का कुछ नहीं करना हमने. देखो anode से silver metal dissolves in the solution, and those silver ions are the one which will go and dissolve at the deposit at the cathode. Iron के ऊपर. Iron is not doing anything in this case. So cathode पे these silver ions will gain electron and turn into silver. So it's basically both the reactions will involve the less reactive metal. एक जगह वो dissolve होगा और दूसरी जगह जाके deposit हो जाएगा. That's like gain of electron reduction. Like what's the reason, for example, why iron doesn't participate in this reaction? Between silver and iron, if you see that selective discharge series जो मैंने आपको positive ions की बताई थी, right? So if you see that series, तो उसमें iron 3 plus or 2 plus, they are much higher than silver. So what does it mean? In the presence of these ions, it's silver ions which will always go to the cathode, right? Not the iron. समझ आ रही बात? That is why anode say silver dissolves in the solution itself and gets attracted to the cathode, and any other ion present in the solution, for example, even if I don't have silver in the solution, I mean preferable choice क्या है? The electrolyte must have the ions of that metal जो आपने deposit करना है. Like if you want to electroplate silver or iron, so you should have silver ions in the solution. But even if you don't have silver ions in the solution, and let's say if I had solution hydrogen ion, water है, कोई solution है, silver nitrate का solution है, तो how about hydrogen ion? अब वो series में आप देखो तो silver ion is still lower than hydrogen ion even, right? So in presence of hydrogen or iron ion, still silver ions are the one which will discharge at the cathode. क्योंकि सिल्वर इज लाइक सेकंड लास्ट, गोल्ड से ऊपर है. जो मैंने आपको गोल्ड शायद लिखवाया नहीं था, तो सिल्वर उसके हिसाब से लास्ट है, बट गोल्ड इज इवन आफ्टर दैट. सो बिल्कुल एंड पे शायद मैंने मेंशन किया होगा. इट्स लाइक इन प्रेजेंस ऑफ सिल्वर और गोल्ड और दीज आयंस, hydrogen ion or iron, copper, they don't have any chance to discharge at the cathode. So anode dissolves and deposits at the cathode. That's the major observation that we get in this case. इसको मैं इधर लिख भी देता हूँ. तो ये based on that selective discharge series, it's like the silver ions are actually reacting at cathode anode both places. इसलिए electroplating होती है. अब the thing is कि इस case में when we go for the observations, so this strip of silver electrode, it will be consumed out. It is dissolving in the solution and deposits at the steel spoon on that side. तो इसमें जो major observation है, it is like anode dissolves and silvery solid deposits at cathode. Like with the passage of time, the silver anode will become less as it's being turning on to the cathode, and eventually the silvery solid, because silver metal is being deposited on the spoon. Once you take out that spoon, it will be evenly covered with the silver atoms, right? And it's like electroplated, chemically attached. It's not coated on its surface. Okay, important है. I mean, let's say if I had a molten silver, molten like melt कर लिया मैंने heat करके. अब molten silver में if I dip the spoon and take it out, So even that will be covered with the silver, right? समझ आ रही है मेरी बात? Without passing current. But that silver which I melt and deposit on some surface won't stick to that surface forever. It will be temporary. Temporary कैसे? ये बात मेरी समझ आ रही है आप लोगों को? नहीं आ रही, देखा? मैं फिर अच्छी बात है ना, ऐसे कहा करो नहीं आ रही समझ। नहीं, मैं फिर रिपीट करता हूँ। You should, this will actually make you understand the importance of electroplating. अब let's say if I had evaporating dish, उसमें I took molten silver, like silver metal, turned into liquid by heat, melt हो गया, like gold, silver, and then I put that spoon into it, and then I take out that spoon, the silver molten will be covering it, and I'll just dry it out, right? तो मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि even that will apparently cover your spoon with silver, but that's not permanent. That is, if I throw that spoon on the floor, the pieces of silver will shed off from the spoon, उतर जाएंगे, scale off हो जाएंगे, right? But once you electroplate your spoon with silver, so no matter what you do, the silver won't go down, उससे उतरेगा नहीं, even if you scratch it. So electroplating is a chemical change. It makes the metal stick to that other metal chemically, not physically attached, right? That's why electroplating is done in industry, not कि जी आप melt करके उसको dip कर करके निकाल लो और बेच दो, ठीक है ना? It's just like ये जो आपकी artificial jewelry है, if it is gold plated, if you just melt gold and dip your necklace into it and take it out, so the flakes of gold will go off after some time. But if it's electroplated, it won't go anywhere. ये अच्छा, अब इसमें कोई क्वेश्चन है आप लोग पूछ लें? I'll just add the advantages and the reasons of electroplating, like why is it done in industry. जो points मैंने start में थोड़े बताए थे वो लिख भी लें because पेपर में आते हैं, तो मैं इसको इधर लिख देता हूँ। अभी आप लोग बड़ा पढ़ना शुरू कर दो, ठीक है ना, क्योंकि अभी हम लोगों ने टेस्ट सीरीज स्टार्ट कर दी है। थर्सडे को फिर एसिड बेसिस का टेस्ट है, मंडे को इलेक्ट्रोकेमिस्ट्री का टेस्ट है। आप लोग टेस्ट एसिड बेसिस सॉल्ट्स पूरा चैप्टर, इतना बड़ा नाम है चैप्टर का, कौन ले बार बार, तो ये आएगा, और इलेक्ट्रोकेमिस्ट्री मंडे को, ठीक है ना। आप लोग टेस्ट में मार्क्स अच्छे लो तो हैप्पी लाइफ, नहीं तो फिर काम खराब है। Umar, you understand what I'm saying? You didn't understand the threat part in that. That was not even for you, don't worry. Till summer. Vana काम खराब है. This I can't translate. Okay, so advantages of electroplating. हाँ हाँ पता नहीं, चलिए अच्छा 5-7 मिनट रहते हैं अभी भी। अच्छा भैया देखो advantages or like industrial use of electroplating. So electroplating in industry is done in industry. हाँ लिखो ना, like electroplating is a process which is done at large scale in industry. For example, in car industry, second, all these heavy bikes, their handles and bars and rims, fancy. और यार नहीं, वो अलग आता है कार इंडस्ट्री. Listen, car industry में that stage where you know, before fitting in the engine and car seats and everything, the whole car is dipped into that solution. सब्र कर ले, दोनों में फर्क है. So what is the reason for covering your entire car with the less reactive metal is that you don't want to get it rusted afterwards. But if you're having a heavy bike or some fancy car, so all these alloy rims, handles, and all the stuff, that is electroplated as an extra cost. That's not to protect something from rusting at all. That is to make it look better. तो electroplating करने के दो main causes हैं. One, to protect your metal from rusting, and second, to enhance its appearance. So different industry में इसकी different application है. So with respect to each use, they ask you where is this use applied. तो कार इंडस्ट्री में it's to protect rusting process. इसके साथ में लिख देता हूँ to prevent rusting. And in alloy rims और बाइक्स और इसी के साथ आप आर्टिफिशियल ज्वेलरी and silver spoon and everything, that is to enhance the appearance and life of this object. So car alloy rims are coated with chromium, nickel, gold looking metals. Heavy bike rims are coated as well. And then artificial jewelry, I think there has to be double element. This is done, and all the medals इसके साथ वो भी ऐड करेंगे भी आता है सर. Medals and trophies. That's like use or advantage आप कह लो या use कह लो, that would be better word for it. Use of electroplating in industrial scale. To enhance the appearance, I mean उसी में आएगा. I mean a medal is not some sort of you know, very useful object apart from the fact it's given to someone for winning something. So just to make it look better, it's gold plated, typically silver plated and all. इस तरह से इंडस्ट्रियल स्केल पे ये करते हैं. अब इसके बाद नेक्स्ट थिंग आफ्टर इलेक्ट्रोप्लेटिंग इज द बैटरीज. ठीक है, वो तो हम करेंगे कल, लेकिन क्विकली एक और एग्जांपल आप लोग खुद जरा सॉल्व करो. इफ यू आर सपोज्ड टू electroplate chromium on iron. Chromium is also a good reflective metal. So second example में electroplating of chromium on iron. इसका आपने करना कुछ नहीं, आपने सिर्फ इसका डायग्राम में जो ड्रॉ कर रहा हूँ इसको आप लेबल करोगे क्रोमियम और आयरन इलेक्ट्रोड्स, electrolyte. So one of them is chromium, one is iron. You'll decide which one is which. और उसके बाद फिर electrolyte और reaction. और जो electrolyte है इसका वो मैं आपको खुद बता दूँ. It's like Cr3+. हाँ वो मैंने लिखा नहीं, लेकिन ये है कि there are other many metals, but chromium is definitely lot less reactive than iron. हाँ ये नीचे आता है. तो आपने इलेक्ट्रोलाइट क्रोमियम का 3+ ले लेना है. आयरन इज मोर रिएक्टिव देन क्रोमियम. ठीक है ना, क्रोमियम इज लाइक सिल्वर की तरह. हम क्रोमियम को आयरन पे इलेक्ट्रोप्लेट कर रहे हैं. is less reactive than iron. ठीक है, तो इसको आप लेबल करें, ड्रॉ करें. रिएक्शन भी सोच के लिखें क्या होगा। चलो बताओ, शाबाश। क्रोमियम, गुड। एंड कैथोड इज द आयरन, राइट? अब देखो, आयन आई हैव रिटन, तो व्हाट वुड बी द एनोड इक्वेशन? Anode say chromium will dissolve in the solution, right? This will tell you how much electron would it lose, right? So it will actually be losing 3 electrons. Cr 3 plus banega. और cathode पे chromium will deposit. Cathode will actually 3 plus 3 electrons. उस equation को आपने technically reverse करके लिख देना है cathode के लिए। ठीक है, लॉस ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉन, गेन ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉन। ठीक है, क्या हुआ, भूख लग रही है? चलो, दैट वुड बी ऑल। कल हम बैटरीज पढ़ेंगे और उसके बाद अगला जो हमारा इलेक्ट्रोकेमिकल सेल है।